Hey everybody, welcome to another week of the Catholic Bible Study where we have one simple goal, and that is to prepare ourselves for Sunday Mass before Sunday Mass. We do that by looking at the readings that are proclaimed ahead of time so that when we get to Mass, we're not so concerned about getting something out of the message or out of the readings, but we've already received what the Lord wants to give us, or at least part of what the Lord wants to give us. Maybe He wants to give us something when we're there, but there doesn't have to be that pressure. The pressure can be relieved because we've already tapped into the gift of the sacred scriptures and studied them, prayed about them, maybe thought about them in a deeper way. It's a great gift. We have a wonderful day. We're entering a wonderful week, actually. Palm Sunday begins Holy Week, and that is the upcoming Sunday that we're celebrating. Called Palm Sunday or Passion Sunday or the beginning of Passion Week. It is a great time in the life of the church, the holiest week of the entire year. That is to say, the week when we are meant to set our lives more apart for the purposes of the Lord, to enter into the mysteries of the final week of the life of Jesus before His crucifixion and resurrection. That's what we're meant to do more this week than the other weeks of the year. Even though all weeks of the year we're called to be holy, this week in particular is a sacred time. So big encouragement for you. Of course, Palm Sunday is the holy day of obligation because it's a Sunday. But then there's also the Holy Thursday liturgy. There is the Good Friday liturgy. Those are not obligatory, but really excellent times for us to enter into worship and to enter into this mysterious time in the life of Jesus. So certainly a big encouragement for you to go. The Easter Vigil coming up on Holy Saturday. And if you are able to make that, you could still also go to Easter Sunday Mass. If you're not able to go to Easter Vigil, you could go to Easter Sunday. If you go to the Easter Vigil, you don't have to go to Sunday. Anyway, so it's just like it's a great time for us to really take in some extra time for worship, extra time for reflection and quiet and fasting and all those things. So I suppose we'll get to that when we talk about Easter and all of that things. But for now, let's jump in. We've got an extra gospel passage this week. We've got an extra long gospel passage coming up with our main gospel, the reading of the Passion of Jesus according to Matthew. And this week we're going to switch the order up. So we'll start with our first gospel, which of course is how Mass is most likely to begin wherever you go to Sunday Mass. But then I'm going to read the long gospel second, so that'll be our second session this week instead of doing the first reading and then the gospel. And then from there, we'll go to the first reading and the second reading. So we'll have 4 sessions this week instead of 3, and the order will be just slightly different so that we can really just kind of, sit in especially the highlights which are found in the 2 gospel passages. So with that, let's just jump right in with Matthew's Gospel, chapter 21, verses 1 through 11, the triumphal entry of Jesus into the city of Jerusalem. When Jesus and the disciples drew near Jerusalem and came to Bethphage on the Mount of Olives, Jesus sent 2 disciples, saying to them, "Go into the village opposite you, and immediately you will find an ass tethered and a colt with her. Untie them and bring them here to me. And if anyone should say anything to you, reply, 'The Master has need of them.' Then he will send them at once." This happened so that what had been spoken through the prophet might be fulfilled. "Say to daughter Zion, Behold, your king comes to you, meek and riding on an ass, and on a colt, the foal of a beast of burden." The disciples went and did as Jesus had ordered them. They brought the ass and the colt and laid their cloaks over them, and he sat upon them. The very large crowd spread their cloaks on the road, while others cut branches from the trees and strewed them on the road. The crowds preceding him and those following kept crying out and saying, "Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest." And when he entered Jerusalem, the whole city was shaken and asked, "Who is this?" And the crowds replied, "This is Jesus the prophet from Nazareth in Galilee." So good. Okay, so obviously this Mass is different, starting with a gospel passage. It's also probably, I would say probably, going to start in a different location. So normally, of course, you have the opening hymn or entrance antiphon. The priest processes down the main aisle and begins the Mass in the sanctuary. This coming Sunday, Palm Sunday, most likely the priest will begin somewhere outside of the main body of the church. He's allowed to start in the main body of the church. He's actually even allowed to skip this gospel passage entirely and start Mass kind of like a normal Mass. So there's 3 different options that could take place. So anyway, so if Mass looks different at the beginning anyways, it will still be Mass and it's all good, if even it's expected. that it would look a little bit different today with palms and all those things. Okay, so this is the entrance of Jesus, the triumphal entrance into the city of Jerusalem, of course, and that's a big deal because Jesus has spent 3 years of his life preaching and teaching about the kingdom, casting out demons, forgiving sins, establishing his church, built upon the rock of Peter and the apostles. So he's been doing all of these things, all leading up to this final week of his life where he knows he is going to sacrifice himself for the forgiveness of sins. He's going to pour out his blood, and we'll hear more about this, of course, in our next session when we read the Passion. But to get there, he has to get into the city because it's in the city, which is where the temple is, where the sacrifices take place. And so here he's entering in. So he drew near Jerusalem and came to Bethphage. So the word Bethphage just means house of figs. And they don't know necessarily exactly where this place is, except that it's on the Mount of Olives, which is, of course, near Jerusalem. So Jesus sends 2 disciples, which is kind of an interesting thing. Go into the village opposite and find an ass and a colt with her. So a donkey and a colt. Untie them and bring them here to me. So it's kind of an interesting thing. Jesus is like sending his disciples, like, hey, go and take these things, because the purposes of God apparently go above and beyond what might be normal protocol for using someone else's animals. Or could also be the case that Jesus had worked this out ahead of time with the person who owned these animals, whatever it is. But if anyone should say anything to you, reply, the master has need of them. So it's kind of an interesting thing. Again, whether Jesus worked this out privately with the owners of these animals or just the fact of like, okay, this is clearly going to be a fulfillment of something that everyone's been waiting for. And so anyone who is involved in this is going to say, yes, please take my animals, please, because I would love to be a part of this story that I could say that the Master, the Messiah, the one that we've been waiting for centuries, he used my animals to claim his title, his role as the Messiah as he enters into the holy city. It's a really beautiful thought. Anyway, so a couple of things. So it says, this happened so that what had been spoken through the prophet might be fulfilled. And then there's this quote, say to daughter Zion, behold, your king comes to you, meek and riding on an ass and on a colt, the foal of a beast of burden. Okay, so a couple of things about this. First is that it's not one prophecy. It's a combination of prophecies, actually. One from Isaiah chapter 62, verse 11, and then the other from Zechariah chapter 9, verse 9. We're actually going to see this, that Zechariah is used frequently by Matthew. I didn't fully realize that Zechariah was used so frequently by Matthew, but there's a number of places, both here, of course, but then also when we read the Passion, that Matthew makes a number of references to Zechariah. It's kind of an interesting thing. Because Zechariah is not one of the major prophets, he's a minor prophet. It means his book is smaller. And nonetheless, Matthew is very knowledgeable about this prophet, as he is about, seems like all the prophets. He loves Old Testament scriptures. Okay, so anyway, so that's the first point. It's just that this is not, it says that what had been written, spoken through the prophet might be fulfilled. We could say what's spoken through the prophets, because it's multiple prophecies. The second thing is that the Messiah, the king, is riding a donkey rather than a war horse. So the king is riding into Jerusalem to claim his throne, and there's a widespread thought, not universal, but there's a widespread thought at the time of Jesus that the king was going to come like riding on a war horse, that he was going to come to overthrow the city, or excuse me, the Roman Empire that had been occupying Israel. And yet it's not a war horse that Jesus mounts upon, it's a donkey, which actually says, your king comes to you meek and riding on an ass. So the thing that is highlighted here is that a donkey is just more peaceful than a war horse. And so what's being highlighted is the humility and the lowliness of this king. That perhaps he's not coming in the way that many people want him to come, and in the way that some of the people expect him to come. Kind of hidden, which of course we're gonna see here. Of course, in this scene, that the people are crying out Hosanna. They're crying out this beautiful message that is, save us, like you are the one who can save us. And as Jesus is riding on these animals, that the people are spreading their cloaks on the ground. They're putting branches from the trees and strewing them on the road. This sign of homage that is for a new king. That is to say, like, we want him to not have to ride on the ground itself, but let's put a layer of extravagance on the ground, so that is the road that our king rides upon. So anyways, they're showing him extra honor, extra homage for this king. So they're clearly going out of their way to say, like, this is something special. This is someone special that is here. And so they're crying out, Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest. This is, again, a quote from Psalm 118, verse 26, where there's a reference to this king, this priest, this Messiah, who is riding into the city to go up to the altar to offer the sacrifice of conciliation, to offer sacrifice on behalf of the people. Psalm 118 is the final of the Hallel Psalms, which were Psalms 113 through 118, Psalms that were sung specifically during the great feasts of Jerusalem, the Feast of Passover, the Feast of Weeks, and the Feast of Booths, of Tabernacles. So anyway, so all these signs of great honor and homage, and clearly, like, there's excitement building around the entire city. It says the whole city was shaken, and people kept asking, who is this? And the answer is, this is Jesus, the prophet from Nazareth in Galilee. So, like, just lots of excitement. And yet we know what's coming. We know that by the end of the next session in our Bible study this week, that the crowds are no longer going to be calling out Hosanna to the Son of David, but instead the crowds are going to be calling out for his crucifixion. So it's just kind of a really, interesting thing how quickly the fickle crowd can shift from one side to the other. And what is that? Well, who knows whether it's based on empty expectations, whether it's based on the ease of being swayed by the religious leaders. Who knows necessarily what's going on, the influence of the demonic perhaps. But nonetheless, like that's what we see over the course of Holy Week, is this initial excitement and eagerness for Jesus, because the people are seeing that something incredible is taking place. But then it's like over the course of the week, it's like the excitement wanes, and they don't see all of the exciting things that they were expecting to see, and so that causes them to shift in their approach entirely and saying, like, this guy must be an imposter. Let's get rid of him. But nonetheless, we as Christians, of course, we have the benefit of knowing about the resurrection. We have the benefit of being able to read the Gospels all at once. And so, like, in so many ways, we can see so many of Jesus's miracles and his authoritative teaching. We can see his casting out of demons. We can see his raising of the dead. We can see so many things all at once just by looking at the Gospels themselves. So we have this benefit of knowing, like, no, this actually is something special. And what's more, we have the benefit of 2,000 years of historical understanding and interpretation of the Gospels. So we can actually see things like, oh, they're quoting here Psalm 118, or they're quoting here these two prophets that are put together, or what's more, another image that is coming into play here is that as Jesus rides this donkey into the city Jerusalem, there's like an image of Solomon. Actually, Solomon, a great king at the beginning, at least, this wise king, very prudent king, gifted by the Lord. Solomon, what does he do when he becomes the king? He's called also the son of David. He takes David's own donkey and he rides, David's mule, and he rides the mule into the city Jerusalem. And as he does so, the crowd celebrates. And it brings a lot of commotion to the holy city, Jerusalem. So too with Jesus, of course, he's called the Son of David. He rides the donkey into the city, and as he does so, the crowd celebrates, and it brings commotion. It brings this shakenness to the city that are causing people to say, like, who is this? That's so again, like a matching sort of thing of, like, what do the people do when it's time for a new king? They celebrate. They pull out all the stops to honor this king. And this is exactly what they're doing here with Jesus. And as Christians, we can say, like, yes, they get it, at least here. They don't get it in the end, but they get it at least here. And that's something that's really beautiful, worth celebrating. One thing that, just in my own personal reflection, that I think about is this last line here. Who is this? The whole city is asking, who is this? And the crowds replied, this is Jesus, the prophet from Nazareth in Galilee. So first, they call him a prophet, so they don't fully understand who he is. He is a prophet, but he's also a priest and a king. And so there's still maybe this developing understanding of who Jesus is that needs to take place in their hearts. But the second thing is that when we honor Jesus as we ought to honor him, it causes people to wonder, like, what's going on? Who is this person that you're honoring? And so I think it's worth our own kind of reflection of, like, am I honoring Jesus in such a way that it's causing people to wonder about who he is? And that doesn't mean that I need to be, like promoting empty show of this. I don't need to be vain in the way that I'm honoring Jesus. But nonetheless, we've seen this over the course of our Lenten readings. When the woman at the well encounters Jesus, she goes into the city to proclaim, like, let me tell you all about this guy who told me everything that's ever happened to me in my life. When Jesus healed the man born blind, this guy can't help but to see and proclaim to people that he sees. And his whole thing is like, I don't know actually who this Jesus is, but he's healed me. I was blind, and then I encountered him, and he gave me sight. So we see this kind of thing. And of course, Lazarus was dead, and Jesus calls him back to life. And so you can imagine, like, Lazarus, he's this walking image of what Jesus can do for us, the way that Jesus can heal us and literally bring new life to us. And so, of course, that's going to, like, the witness of their life is going to cause people to say, okay, I got to get to know this Jesus. So too now it all kind of culminates in this grand entrance, this triumphal entrance into the city, where all of the people are just like, Hosanna, Hosanna, this is the guy. This is the one that we've been waiting for. This is the guy that can save us. Hosanna in the highest. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Which of course we sing during the liturgy. Anyway, so perhaps there's room for us to do this, not with like sour faces and being kind of embarrassed about it, but what if we just boldly and radically proclaimed, like, yes, this is the only one. This is the only one that's worth living for, because he is the only one that can forgive my sins. He's the only one that can truly save me from this corrupt generation, save me from myself, really, in many ways. And so I have to honor him. I have to go out of my way to cut off branches so that he can walk upon them, to throw down my finest garments so that he can walk upon them, to just show the world that he is my king indeed. Whew, so good. Okay, we'll see you for our next session coming up. Peace.